Think about how warfare keeps changing. For ages, it felt like it was all about bigger, faster, more expensive.
Right.
But what if something, well, small and actually pretty cheap could rewrite the playbook?
That's exactly what we're seeing with drones.
Yeah, drones. And what really caught our eye is the U.S. Marine Corps actually standing up its own dedicated attack drone team.
And it's not happening in a vacuum either. The sources we looked at, they really point to this acceleration in drone tech everywhere. Countries like China, Russia, they're pushing hard.
So it's not just surveillance anymore.
No, definitely not. This is about offensive capability, attack drones.
Okay, so our mission for this deep dive is to really get into why the Marines are doing this right now, what these attack drones can actually do, and, what the bigger picture looks like.
What it all means, yeah.
We've got some solid info, mainly from a Fox News piece that details the Marine Corps plan, plus some expert commentary to add context. So let's start with the team itself, the MCAT, Marine Corps Attack Drone Team.
Right, the MCAD-DT, formed earlier this year. And they're based down at the Weapons Training Battalion in Quantico, Virginia.
Quantico. Okay, so that signals they're serious about the training and tactics side of things.
Absolutely. Their whole focus is getting these armed first-person view drones, FPV drones, integrated right into the Fleet Marine Force, the FMF.
And the goal, according to Major Alejandro Tabazon, who's heading up MCAD-DT, it's about boosting the firepower for small units.
Exactly. Giving those small Marine units capabilities they don't currently have organically, things they'd usually have to call up the chain for.
So making them more agile, more lethal.
By using these newer technologies and figuring out the best ways to, employ them, sharpening those TTPs, tactics, techniques, and procedures.
What sort of limitations are we talking about for those small units right now? Is it about getting eyes on target quickly, or maybe that immediate fire support?
It's a bit of both. Often, a squad on the ground, they need to request support for recon or for a precise strike. That takes time. It's not always there right when they need it.
And these FPV drones offer that instant capability.
That's the idea. Organic capability right there at the squad level. And the tech itself is, well, it's pretty impressive. You're talking squad level lethality.
Lethality, okay. And the range?
Up to 20 kilometers. That's nearly 12.5 miles.
Wow, okay. And FPV means the operator sees exactly what the drone sees.
Precisely. Like you're flying it from the drone's perspective, hence first-person view. It allows for incredibly precise targeting, and maybe the most striking part, the cost.
Right, the cost. What are we talking?
Under $5,000 per unit.
Under $5,000. That seems incredibly low for a military asset with that kind of range and precision.
It really is. And that affordability, that's a huge driver in this sort of global drone arms race we're seeing now.
Because it lowers the barrier to entry.
Massively.
Yeah.
You don't need a huge traditional military budget to field a significant drone threat anymore. And the thinking in the Marine Corps seems to be that these can actually be more effective than some older, much pricier systems in certain situations.
Interesting. The article mentioned a specific drone, the Skydio X2D.
Yeah, they used that one for reconnaissance during training. Shows the versatility. Even if it's primarily for recon, it's part of that drone ecosystem they're building.
Okay, so stepping back a bit, Brett Velikovich, he's an Army veteran, drone expert. He thinks this Marine Corps move is overdue.
He does. He puts it pretty bluntly. The U.S. is playing catch-up in a drone arms race, especially against China, Russia, and Iran.
And he feels the U.S. is behind.
Yeah, particularly with China. He argues China's way ahead in producing low-cost, scalable, and lethal drone tech. It's not just about numbers, but the whole package.
And he wants a shift in thinking.
A fundamental one. He says we need to stop seeing drones just as ISR assets, intelligence, surveillance, reconnaissance, and start thinking of them as ammunition.
Ammunition. That's a powerful way to put it. It implies they're expendable, numerous, integrated directly into offensive operations.
Exactly. A consumable asset for delivering effects.
But hang on, if they're so cheap and effective, why has it taken the U.S. military, or at least parts of it, this long to really integrate them at this scale? What were the hurdles?
That's a fair question. I mean, part of it might be the traditional focus on large, exquisite platforms. Think fighter jets, tanks, big ships. Inertia, maybe.
The established ways of doing things.
Right. And also the really rapid development, particularly in these smaller, agile FPV drones, that's relatively recent. The technology has matured incredibly fast.
And the conflict in Ukraine seems to have been a real catalyst.
Absolutely. The article highlights this too. what we're seeing in Ukraine. It's been a brutal, real-world proving ground for drone warfare on a massive scale.
Yeah, the examples are stark. Ukrainians using drones that cost, what, a few $100?
Sometimes, yeah. Using those to take out multi-million-dollar Russian tanks or other high-value targets, it just completely flips the cost-benefit analysis of traditional warfare.
And the production numbers coming out of Ukraine.
Yeah.
Just staggering.
Unbelievable, really. Their defense minister mentioned over 1.5 million FPV drones made in 2024 alone, for everything from recon to attack roles.
1.5 million. And almost all domestically produced.
Over 96%, according to the article, which tells you something crucial about the need for a robust, agile domestic manufacturing base for this stuff.
One plant doing 100,000 a month, is that right?
That was reported, yeah. One plant hit that kind of rate. That level of scalability is, well, it's a game changer in a protracted conflict.
Okay, so then you look at the U.S., the Department of Defense estimate mentioned in the article. U.S. capacity is maybe up to 100,000 drones per year.
Per year, yeah.
Yeah.
That comparison is, well, it's quite stark, isn't it?
It really highlights the difference in scale and maybe urgency perceived by different nations.
It does, and it suggests that that traditional U.S. edge in, say, the sheer number of big platforms or personnel, that's being challenged by how accessible and scalable this drone tech is. It's not just about having more drones, it's a different kind of warfare economics.
And Russia's ramping up too. Putin's statement from late April 2025.
Right. He reported delivering over 1.5 million drones of various types in the previous year, and specifically mentioned something like 4,000 FPV drones getting to the front lines daily.
4,000 a day.
Mm-hmm.
And even then, he apparently said, we need more of them.
Mm-hmm. It just shows the incredible demand and the recognized importance of these systems on both sides of that conflict. The technological race is intense.
Then there's China. We mentioned them earlier. Craig Singleton, from the Foundation for Defensive Democracies, he points to DJI.
Yeah, the big commercial drone maker. Singleton estimates DJI controls something like, what, over 70% of the global drone market.
70%, that's huge market dominance.
It is. And Singleton raises a significant national security flag there.
How so?
He basically calls DJI drones data collectors for Beijing. The concern is they could be hoovering up sensitive imagery, flight pattern data, info on critical infrastructure, all potentially flowing back to China. It's more than just selling hardware.
Right, so his advice isn't necessarily for the U.S. to just try and match China's sheer numbers drone for drone?
No, not exactly. His recommendation is more strategic. Focus on building a sustainable production base. He threw out a figure, maybe a minimum of 250,000 drones per year for the U.S.
Okay, 250K, still way up from the 100K estimate, but not trying to match millions.
Right. And crucially, protect the supply chains for those drones and really push hard on accelerating innovation.
So smarter, cheaper, more resilient drones, maybe deployed differently.
Exactly. He mentioned swarms, thinking about how to use them more effectively, perhaps overwhelming defenses through coordinated attacks, rather than just relying on individual drone capability. It's about innovation and adaptability, not just mass.
And we are seeing some U.S. military efforts to sort of sharpen those skills. The article mentions a competition.
Yeah, the Military Drone Crucible Championship, hosted by the U.S. National Drone Association down in Florida later this summer.
And the Marines' new drone team, MCDT, they'll be there, along with the Army Rangers.
That's right, the 75th Ranger Regiment, too. It's clearly a venue to test and showcase drone skills, push the boundaries on tactics for modern combat. It shows they're taking the hands-on skill development seriously.
Okay, so let's try and wrap this up. Key takeaways. The Marines are definitely moving forward, setting up this MCAT to get armed FPV drones into the hands of small units.
Yep, recognizing their potential lethality and relatively low cost.
But this is happening while other countries, notably Ukraine in the midst of conflict and potentially Russia and especially China with its market dominance, are producing drones on a vastly different scale.
A much larger scale, yeah. The production gap seems significant based on these reports.
So the U.S. clearly needs to scale up its own production and really double down on innovation to stay ahead, or at least competitive in this space.
Absolutely. And what's important for you, the listener, to grasp is that this isn't just some niche military tech story. It signals a potentially fundamental shift in conflict. Affordable, accessible tech having a huge impact.
Which leaves us with a final thought to chew on. You know, given how fast this tech is moving and how cheap it's becoming, how could it change things beyond the battlefield? What about wider security, even civilian life down the road?
What are those broader strategic, maybe even ethical implications as these things become, well, everywhere?
Definitely something to keep watching closely.